Hi, everybody. I want to say thank you very much for joining me. This is a very special presentation, a special conversation. I'm doing for Weird Homes Tour. Their Austin tour, the virtual tour, is happening September 5th. So super excited about that. Weird Homes Tour, they used to be only in person, but now they've moved to virtual, like all of us have during COVID. And I wanted to first throw out there, if you haven't bought your tickets yet, definitely use promo code TRYWEIRD at the virtual ticket and book tickets package. That's one that I've worked out with them with Tricycle Creative. It will save you 20% off of your ticket. Now, even if you don't want to get the ticket in the book, you can still just get a ticket. And what's important here is not just the cool weirdness, right? I know you're curious about what these weird Austin homes are, but the really cool thing that Weird Homes Tour does that I really love is that for every city they are in, they work with a local nonprofit. And that's why I'm here today to talk with the Austin local nonprofit. So without further ado, I want to bring in Susan McDowell. Susan, welcome to the video, whatever this, the show, if you will. Why don't you start by introducing yourself?
Well, thank you, Ross. It's Susan McDowell. I am CEO of Lifeworks here in Austin, Texas.
So why don't we start here? It's as good a place to begin as any, and that is the beginning. What is
Right.
Lifeworks?
Right, the very beginning.
Yeah.
So Lifeworks, we are a nonprofit organization here in Austin, Texas that has a mission of fearless advocacy on behalf of youth who are finding their pathways to self-sufficiency. And sometimes we're very heartfelt about our mission and our youth, but we also approach it in terms of what problem are we trying to help our youth solve, right? And we're helping our youth who are by and large young adults. So think 16 to mid 20s. We're helping our youth just reduce all of the barriers that they face to being self-sufficient, right? And usually along this pathway, many folks have, parents and teachers and grandparents who help them at this kind of critical time of not being a child anymore, but not being quite an adult anymore. Our youth at Lifeworks are youth who have grown up in foster care, or they've experienced a lot of homelessness, a lot of transition, a lot of trauma. So the Lifeworks network of support is really that kind of alternate network of advocates who are fearless. We're fierce in our devotion, and we create opportunities around housing, around mental health support, and around workforce and education to really help kind of build this bridge to adulthood and to self-sufficiency.
Homelessness is I say challenging with I recognizing that is not even the best appropriate word for it, but I have to believe that homelessness for that age range that you serve, I have to believe that they are kind of the very vulnerable at that in that age group.
So there's so many misunderstandings about homelessness, right? And I'm often asked, "Wow, you work with a whole bunch of homeless teens, right?" And that people are not being derogatory or demeaning, but I'm finding myself increasingly kind of gently redirecting people, because language matters, right? To use the term experiencing homelessness, because if you are experiencing homelessness, you know that it is because what has actually happened to you is you've experienced something or some things that are just terrible, like you have lost your family. You have ended up in foster care and transitioned 20 or 30 times without a network to age out to. Or you've made a mistake in your teen years and been in juvenile justice, and then you're discharged and you don't have a network of support around you. So you've experienced something really terrible, and as a result, you're battling with homelessness, right? But homelessness has such a stigma, so much fear around it, that we lose sight of the fact that you're there and you've experienced something tragic in your life. And then as a result, because of experiencing homelessness, you're encountering just a whole lot of trauma along the way that just kind of reinforces the challenges you already face.
Is it kind of like, almost like a domino effect, if you will, that it can kind of, I know that the colloquial term as far as a gateway drug, if you will, but to say like, this is kind of something that can lead to other,
Right.
negative or stressful or challenging things that maybe that age group especially, but any age group may not be prepared to deal with.
Right. So, a little known fact about youth homelessness is that in Travis County, anyway, is that 76% of youth experiencing homelessness have been in foster care, juvenile justice, or both, right? So they've been in these big public systems that were never intended to raise children to adulthood, right? In kind of an institutional way, yet but we're very critical that of them when they don't have success. So, just understanding that and understanding that a lot of the trauma in these institutions is just that youth are not getting the nurturing they need. They are being moved around a lot from kind of placement to placement or institution to institution. And they just need a whole lot of understanding and support to once they've been emancipated, to really make that bridge to adulthood. And housing is a huge part of that. Well, for obvious reasons.
The foundation, right? I mean, almost no pun intended, but there's, you got to have the safe space, there's, you got to have some, I feel like some amount of safety and in your life to be able to kind of proceed forward. So I'd be curious to hear, all the things you've talked about some of the unique challenges, if you will, that come with serving this audience. Can you talk a little bit about Lifeworks programs?
Absolutely.
What are some of those special, maybe they're super specialized, maybe they're not, but for someone out there that has now heard about this, what are some of the programs that Lifeworks either has created or, manages, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So we actually have about 20 different programs within Lifeworks, right? So over a lot of years, we've built a very large continuum of support for youth, because what works for some youth won't work for other youth. And we believe very strongly that youth kind of know what they need, right, to help them on their pathway. So we've developed a menu, but it's organized under 3 core beliefs. All of our programs are organized under 3 core beliefs. The first is that everybody deserves a place to call home, right? But what looks like home for some doesn't look like home for others. And this is the Weird Home Store, right? We know this, that
absolutely
people need what works for them to build that safety. So we operate emergency shelters, transitional living programs. We have apartment-based programs where youth receive time-limited financial and service support while they're getting on their feet. But we also have active street outreach programs, just reaching out to youth who maybe are recently on the street to help kind of provide that, to engage and provide that pathway off the street. And then we have a program that we call Diversion that's working with foster care, juvenile justice, school districts to identify youth who are at risk of homelessness, so we can provide support and services before they have to endure that trauma, right? So a place to call home is obviously really important. Second thing we believe is very important is that everybody deserves the opportunity to learn and to work at their own pace, in areas they're interested in, and in ways that, frankly, normalize and celebrate the so-called mistakes of failure along the way, right? Because we've all had them, right? I don't know what you did in your first job, but, I'm not at my first job.
Correct.
Right? Because I learned many things flipping hamburgers. Mostly absolutely. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do, right? And then that led to, and I stunk at it as a result.
For a very long time, one of my career stops, I created and managed an internship program. And it's funny that you say that, because that was literally the thing that I said at every single orientation to the kids that we had come through our program, was that many of you may find out what you want to do. And some of you may discover what you don't want to do.
Yes.
And they are of equal value. I had
someone
come to me one point. He was interning in the accounting department. And I was working at SiriusXM. So it was like a sexy media company, super cool. And he was working in the accounting company. And at the end, we did a final evaluation. And he sits down and he's like, I, I don't think I want to do this like for my career. And it wasn't because he had a bad experience or had a bad mentor or anything like that. And he was very candid about it. He's like, none of those things were bad. I just now have been able to see what it's like. And, so you saying that brings up all of that for me. And I appreciate it. And I get it. I get it. I've seen it firsthand also, the value of learning what you don't want to do just as much as what you want to do.
It's really important. My first job flipping hamburgers taught me a lot about, it taught me a few things about responsibility, right? And started some restaurant skills that served me very well through college. But it taught me a lot about what I didn't want to do. So then the next job similarly taught me a little bit more about what I want to do, and also some stuff about what I didn't want to do. Motivated me to get my college applications in on time. But this is the kind of runway that's gradual, that's developmental, that's age appropriate, and all youth deserve to have access to those kind of learning opportunities. But it's different if you grow up in foster care. If you grow up in foster care, you may or may not be allowed to have an after-school job. Or, you may not have had people in your lives, say you've been in 20, 30 foster care placements, you may not have had a consistent person talking to you about what they see as your strengths, what they see as your talents, really kind of engaging you in this thought process.
I think that mentoring,
what you want to be.
That mentoring piece, whether it's a parent or someone else, is so important. I recently had, there was a college professor. So I lived, breathed, slept at our college radio station. And thank God, I don't know what I would do if I didn't find my college radio station. I don't know. But this professor was so instrumental in my life. And actually recently he passed away. But I've been doing this whole project, gathering up all of my colleagues, all of my fellow students that we went to school together, and talking about him and celebrating him. And I think when you talk about that idea of a mentor, again, whether it's a parent, sometimes a parent mentor is the trickiest, right?
Yeah.
Because they're your parent.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many times in my career at various times they've been like, I agree with the parent. They're like, can you just tell them though? Because they don't listen to what I say. And then when all of a sudden the same words can be said and they're like, oh yeah, that's smart. That's smart. Like he said it, but the parents sitting in the corner like, I don't even, what the heck? So I can appreciate that aspect too of building up this trust network. I have to believe that's critically important too. And they're developing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that can't be rushed, right? If you were, again, like a youth who grew up in foster care, there have been a lot of adults that you've trusted and maybe been let down because a placement didn't work out, or you got transferred to another placement and nobody talked to you about it. So there's a lot of trust is a tricky issue, right? You really have, in doing this work, you have to do what you say you're going to do. And a lot of times that just means listening, right? Listening to what it is that their dreams are, even if that takes a while because they're not used to being asked. So the opportunity to learn and work is essential, and we have several programs that address that. But then the final piece, so we've got a place to call home, the opportunity to learn and work. But then the final piece is also foundational, and that's that everybody deserves the chance to heal from the trauma that life brings. And, anybody listening to this has experienced trauma in their lives. We all, you don't get through life without escaping trauma. But the youth that we're serving have already had way more than their share of trauma. Youth in foster care are twice as likely as U.S. Iraq war veterans to experience post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
And what we know about trauma is trauma, especially at a young age, can impede learning. It can impede emotional development. It comes at a real cost. We also know, though, a whole lot more about how to heal trauma than we used to. Into the adult years, the brain is still plastic, but it is incumbent on us to create healing environments for our youth. And we are a trauma-informed system of care at Lifeworks, meaning we really go the extra mile to understand the mindset of youth who have experienced just very, very terrible things. We also have a collection of mental health services, many of them evidence-based, that give youth a wide choice in how they want to engage in their recovery. So we have everything from counseling, we have office-based counseling, we have community-based counseling, we have individual counseling, group counseling, psychiatric support. We also have a program called peer support, where a youth can develop a relationship with somebody who has walked in their shoes and can share their life experience as part of the healing process. So, like with our other programs, we've got this offering, and for our youth, it's not so much that, we say, hey, nice to meet you. Here's what we've got that we think you need it. It's more like, hey, tell us about yourself. What's got you stressed out now? What's got you excited now? Where do you want to go? How can we help? Right? And whatever feels safe and right to them in terms of engaging in mental health services or workforce or housing, that's the direction that we go. And because we have so much we can offer in service, it's in a journey that is different for every youth. That can be in one Lifeworks program. It can be in 5 Lifeworks programs. It can be over a real short period of time, or it can take a couple of years, because again, that's just kind of the natural runway for young adults, that they need folks hanging in with them for.
That's so amazing, the diversity of programs, because we talk the needs are so incredibly different too. So
yeah.
You guys are a nonprofit. So I'd be curious, this has got to require a small army. I ran a nonprofit for a while too, and I had a real small army. Most nonprofits are pretty small. They're almost like special forces or Green Beret. You have 5 people to do the job of 20 or something like that. So how has COVID impacted this? Have you had to roll back some programs? Is there more need now? What does that kind of look like for Lifeworks?
For sure. Well, we turned on a dime in March for sure. So we've got a good size army at Lifeworks. We have about 200 staff members that do the work of about 1,000. I should qualify. That's just, you do nonprofit work. This is you sign up for hard, committed work. But when it became clear to us that we were facing a pandemic, that we would have to have a public health response that would both would protect our community, would protect our youth and staff, and just really, but continue to support the journeys of our youth. We got really serious about what was most important. So we run some services, including 2 shelters and a day resource center for youth experiencing homelessness. That has to be in person and face to face, socially distanced. It took us a while to figure that out, just like it took everybody a while to figure out things like how to get PPE and what social distancing in an emergency shelter looks like. So that was, it was stressful. And I just have to say, for the Lifeworks staff and clients, we just have a whole lot of incredibly brave heroes that stepped up and did the work and figured out how to do it. So those services remain in person. We also have, I mentioned we have a whole lot of counseling services, workforce services, case management services, and those pivoted pretty quickly to telehealth or phone or virtual, and just the creativity is off the charts. A month ago,
have you weirdly found that maybe to be able to be more impactful? And maybe, I just be curious, because maybe that increases the access for those services.
Right. So it's a mixed bag, and we're still, I think, like everybody, we're trying to understand that. So, we do a whole lot of family counseling in one of the Lifeworks programs. And what we found is that the rate at which people keep appointments has increased significantly. And so we're thinking, wow, maybe this feels like a safer modality for counseling, or maybe it's just you're just not driving across town in rush hour Austin traffic. So, so that looks really good, right? But then we have to ask ourselves, and this is what obviously the schools are asking right now, are we sure everybody who needs us has access to communication equipment, has access to wireless? So a lot of the first couple of months of us providing service, particularly for youth who we know were isolated and fragile, was about getting them the right technology in hands so they didn't slip through the cracks. And I think, honestly, that's the question that is at one of the questions that it's the forefront of Lifeworks' mind and other social service providers. Are we sure that in a virtual reality we're addressing everybody who has need? And do they have the equipment?
Because it's been a crash course. Right?
For everybody.
I don't think that any of us maybe thought or certainly didn't hope that this would be going on as long as it has been. To be the eternal optimist there is, okay, well, we're getting more time to spend with these virtual telehealth type programs. And I've just been a big preacher, even with my other clients and with other businesses and things like that, is to say that, when we get out of this, because there is a when, when we get that, that you take the learnings and you apply them, right? Yeah. Because I've had so many businesses, and actually Weird Homes Tour is a fantastic example. Mm-hmm. They were an in-person tour, and then COVID-19 hit, and that it threw a wrench into the gears, And so how do they, again, everyone pivot, right? How do we move? What changes do we make? And the virtual aspect of the Weird Homes Tour has really opened up to new audiences that maybe never would have been able to get exposed to all the great things and all the really cool and interesting people and homes and David and Shelley, I would assume. So just like their good spirit behind it. But I think that's the thing is just when we're out of this, what's the value? What are the takeaways? What are the things that worked? What are the things that we don't know about? And to continue to keep trying that, not just to be like, okay, that was over. Now let's go back to what we were doing before.
It's not like I'll never be on Zoom again.
Yeah, right. I'm also a huge proponent of remote work to begin with. I think it has such, and as residents of the #1 place to live in America, that's crazy growing, you actually see the benefits of kind of the remote work things too, because you get less congestion on the roads, you get, less people driving. It has environmental impact. It has, it has cost savings benefits. So, it's not an exit or an off-ramp that any of us were anticipating taking, but I think that we can enjoy some aspects of the journey for when we get back on the road.
I completely agree. I have absolutely no doubt that, telehealth, virtual case management has opened up service to folks who, for whatever reason, didn't access in-person services. And so moving forward, there's absolutely no doubt we will be more flexible in how we offer services, because it means we can serve more people that way.
That's right? Awesome.
But in terms of operating the organization, we've grown pretty rapidly over the last 5 years, and bursting at the seam in our physical buildings. And we're just at the point of thinking, okay, we've really got to address this. Oh gosh, what's it going to be? Is it going to be another building? We have to raise a whole lot of money. That's not necessarily on the table now, because we have figured out how to work from home. Case managers, counselors have figured out how to be very efficient with their time and seeing clients. And so, maybe not, we don't have to take the time to drive into the office every day when this is over. So it absolutely has changed how we're going to run this organization and how we're going to engage with youth.
It's normalized some otherwise foreign behavior when it comes to virtual stuff. I think
overnight.
Absolutely.
Well, and and I'm just going to tell the story on us and be clear about it. So, we're operating with on a Microsoft Teams platform at Lifeworks, which we've had for about 2 years, and all of a sudden it took us 2 weeks to be like, okay, we're using this now, no more putting it off, right? So we were fortunate that we had the infrastructure set up, but had been fairly resistant to a lot of the functionality for a couple of years before saying, all right, now we're there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good, again, there's so much negative and stress and loss and challenge going on right now that I think that's a good thing. So I want to move over. This is you've worked with Weird Homes Tour for a couple of years. Am I correct?
Yeah, this is yes, several.
Okay. So if you didn't know and you're watching this, that as I mentioned, Weird Homes Tour, whatever city they're in, they donate a portion of their proceeds to charity. When we're doing the Austin tour, which is coming up on September 5th of 2020, they are donating a portion to Lifeworks. But I'm curious to hear, what are other ways, if someone, has heard this story, hearing what you're talking about, and someone wants to get involved or support Lifeworks, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So we have, let me talk about the campaign to end youth homelessness real quick. So I described our services around housing, mental health, and education and workforce. Over the last several years, we have been engaged, our leadership, in a movement to end youth homelessness in Austin. And that actually is tied to reaching some benchmarks, making youth homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Rare, meaning that we want as few youth as possible to ever experience the trauma of homelessness. Brief, meaning if a youth does experience homelessness, we want to make sure they are off the street and in permanent housing, not just shelter, but permanent housing within 30 days. And then non-recurring, meaning it only happens once. We get youth into the right kind of housing with the right kind of supports so that they succeed, right? So how you can get involved in Lifeworks right now, we have obviously financially, and there is more on our website, lifeworksaustin.org, about how to make a financial contribution to the campaign to end youth homelessness. But additionally, I have to tell you, so since October of 2018, which is when we launched kind of formally our campaign to end youth homelessness, we have housed 574 youth who are experiencing homelessness, and that's a lot.
Wow.
And more than 110 since March, right? So, one part of our response to COVID was saying, okay, we got to focus on what is most important for our organization at this time. And getting youth off the street and into housing was unquestionably the most important thing we can do during this time for our youth and for our community. So we have managed to house more than 110 since March, and we're actually about to scale up our efforts over the fall to do even more. But these are youth who are, a lot of them are coming directly from homelessness. They don't have many worldly possessions. They certainly don't have enough to fill an apartment. So one of the things that we are asking from the public and volunteers is to support move-in kits, right? Apartment starter kits for youth who are going to be moving into their first homes. And there's some information on our website about that. And we're partnering with a local partner that are just amazing called Cocoa Bundle to help us with that.
That's awesome. I mean, again, getting into the home feeling like a home, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like having the things that, I'll say an adult, but like that you have, right? If you haven't gone through that phase of life, I'll just say post high school, not even necessarily college, but going into college, that's, I am obviously a big supporter of continued education, but I think a big function of college is to be like, you're on your own and you're an adult and you have to figure it out, right? I think that is a huge, I say intangible, I suppose, but a huge aspect of college life. While you were talking, though, I wrote myself down a note, and I was curious, and maybe you can answer it, maybe you can't. So I don't want to put you on the spot here, but we talked about Austin being this, the top place to live in the U.S., right? And there's a flocking of people to come here. Do you have any sort of numbers or kind of comparative when it comes to youth homelessness in Austin as it compares to maybe either other cities, other in the region or something like that? And again, I don't want to put you on the spot here. This is certainly something that I'm sure data exists. But I'm just curious because I think a lot of people who maybe either visit here or are looking to move here don't understand homelessness is a major thing here. It is a major issue.
Yeah, and it's, city council a year plus ago in Austin, declared it as their top strategic issue in Austin, because in addition to topping all of these best place to live, best place to be single, I don't know what all the
all the BuzzFeed lists, the top
even
fives, whatever.
What that masks is the got kind of a tale of two Austins going on here, right? What that masks is the other side of it, which is the disparity in wealth and opportunity. And just last week we topped another list, which was, worst place to make a living wage. And I saw some data, and this data is probably a couple of years old, where it would take somebody, more than an 80-hour work week to be able to actually afford, a median income apartment on minimum wage. Right?
You talked about that, the discrepancy, the division, if you will, of wealth, right? And I think that's what you get. You get a lot of people who are moving here from, from coastal larger cities, who are moving here, right? Because listen, Austin is fantastic. It's weird, but it's fantastic. It's a great place to live. But you get that influx of cash, and you get that influx of, I guess even like lifestyle, if you will, that comes with it. And it starts to overwhelm and tip the scales.
Right.
Right. So that was just while you were talking, I was just very curious as far as that goes.
Yeah, but you had asked me about homelessness in Austin and youth homelessness and how we compare to other cities, and it's very difficult to say. What I can tell you, and I'm going to kind of wonk out on you here for a second.
I gave you no warning, so wonking is 100% approved and accepted. I gave you no preparation for a question that very much all the research that you could have done. So I apologize.
Well, please cut me off if it gets a bit much. But at Lifeworks, obviously we're very much of the heart, and we love our youth. This is why we do this work, is they inspire us, right? And this love leads to us really knowing that if we can be of heart 24/7, right? But if we're also not of head, then none of it's going to matter. Our solutions have to work. They have to be what youth want, and our youth, they have to visibly lead to progress. So this led us to establishing a research and evaluation arm of the organization. And for us to get comfortable with, what? We provide services. We are going to ask all of the questions. We're going to measure progress. We're going to listen to our youth. We're going to do that very systematically, because if what we're doing isn't what needs to be done or isn't what's effective, then we're going to be okay admitting that and changing course fast. That's going to be our commitment, to always ask ourselves the question, how can we get better? How can we be the most relevant we can be for what youth believe they need, and hold ourselves accountable too for the progress that they make in
it's kind of the Google approach, if you will. I'm going to say that some people are like, oh, the fail fast. Google is
exactly
fail fasting. Or
Nothing. Yeah,
failing.
nothing hurts like figuring out that you failed slowly over a long period of time.
Oh,
So yeah, we try
like
to make our
pulling the
mistakes.
Band-Aid off slowly. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, make our mistakes, make them quickly, and move on, and just be transparent because we find, if anything, that just builds a lot of credibility with our youth.
Yes.
Frankly, a lot of credibility with our funders too, because most of them just really kind of want to know what works, right?
Well, no one wants to just be throwing money into,
Right.
flushing it down a toilet, like mistakes, particularly when it comes to, well, I mean, I would say of any business, this is something I also encourage even to my own clients who I work with, is that it's part of goal setting, and it's part of running a successful organization, whether it be nonprofit or profit, is understanding where you want to go.
Yeah.
You can't figure out if you're on the right path if you don't know where you want to go. That's part of the thing. It's okay.
Right.
Like I said, you may get detoured here or there, but you're hoping that Google will say recalculating, and you get back on the path, like that's my God.
Right. Exactly. Or you're like, oh, maybe the path needs to go over here a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Because that's
yeah,
what our youth are telling us.
absolutely.
So all of this was, I'm sorry, a little bit longer
No,
way
no,
of
no.
saying that, we approach this not just Lifeworks, but community-wide issue of youth homelessness in a way where we're very diligent about understanding the data. So, I can tell you with a very large degree, well, I can tell you with 100% certainty that tonight there are 262 youth up to the age of 24 who are homeless, and they are on the waiting list for housing. So if you would compare us to San Francisco, undoubtedly they have a larger problem with homelessness than Austin does. But our commitment is to understand the problem we have and solve it, so we don't get to that point. So many of the larger cities are struggling with problems that maybe they could have solved years ago, maybe they couldn't have, and we just don't want to get to that point.
Yeah.
We can. It is a manageable issue now if we're focused and if we're tenacious.
So on a more weirder, in the spirit of Weird Homes Tour, a weirder line of questioning, if you will, I'm very curious. I like to ask people, what if you could give a TED talk on any subject, right? And this could be about, for those of you watching this is the first time I've actually met Susan, but I can already tell, like, you're like in it, like you like are exuding the passion and the spirit of what you do, and that's critical for, I mean, any organization, but especially for a nonprofit. But I'd be curious if you could give a TED talk on any subject related to even what you're doing with Lifeworks or not. What do you think it would be on?
Well, I've actually got a sub list of, TED Talks I'd do if I, had the time or got invited,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But one of them, just kind of apropos of what we were talking about, is, Lifeworks went through a real transition a number of years ago when we were thinking about, okay, can we really not just be a really good provider of services? 4 years ago, Lifeworks was the largest provider of housing and shelter for youth in Austin, Texas, right? We're known for that. We were great at it. We're still great at it, but we were never able to reduce the number of youth in homelessness. So that kind of remained beyond our grasp. So we just went through a very intentional transformation where we went from being a, kind of solo operator, really great provider of housing services and supportive services for youth and families, to being really ruthlessly collaborative. So this movement to end youth homelessness involves multiple agencies. It involves the city and the school district and child protective services and juvenile justice, many of our partner service organizations in town, really working together in lockstep around a super focused mission. We went from, looking at data as, this thing we have to do to, show what we do works, right? To instead thinking, okay, how can we use tool as not a hammer, but a flashlight to really understand what's going on in the community with youth
Yeah,
homelessness.
the old adage, if you're only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? This is definitely a problem that you need that toolbox, multiple different tools. And I would even say that tool, it sounds like from what you're saying, even potentially in different collaborators' hands too.
Yeah. So, I think the TED Talk I'm interested in right now really has to do with kind of transforming the way we think about nonprofits from being, just really good service providers to being to looking broader and being agents of not just individual change, but community change. And I think we're making headway with that in a, again, just really powerful movement of many people in Austin, Texas.
Without this getting, politics is such a powder keg of discussion right now. But I would say, do you think that's part of kind of even this growing movement of kind of, we talked about before the wealth distribution, right, in our city, in Austin. But I think also the almost like the wealth distribution when it comes to public services, right? That the challenges of youth homelessness, and this is to take nothing away from our police force, but they just may be ill-equipped to deal with those challenges. And I think that maybe, and this is where maybe in your experience, you can talk a little bit like the power of collaboration and even the power of kind of that, funding, even in some fractional amount, right, of or even fractional addition, if you will, and the impact that can have. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Oh, for sure. And I think there's a general agreement that just like with teachers, we seem to have evolved. Most teachers decided to become teachers because they wanted to teach, but then they get in a classroom and it's so much more, with eyes on children who are doing well, others who are suffering. And, all of a sudden we want our teachers to address so much more than just learning, right? And I think the same with police officers, right, who are tasked with helping us, stay safe, right, or to be safe in, volatile situations. But then all of a sudden our expectation has grown, right? They're supposed to be mental health responders, right? Social workers, and it's not what they signed up for. That's not what they trained for. But we seem to be relying on them to have that internally, right? So kind of diversification of where money goes to support things that would prevent escalation just seems all the way around to be a good idea. How it's funded is the how of it. I think there's legitimately a lot of debate around, but the what of it, which is that if we are more collaborative in our approach to building and supporting families, and just really getting behind the ability of families to succeed in economies that are strained and cultures that are stressed out because we have all of this political dialogue going through us, or because systemic racism has not been addressed in any way that improves the lives of entire communities, then that's we just need to come together on those. The how of it, that's the debate and often the rancor, but the what of it, that we need to come together and appropriate the resources to just support families succeeding. That's all we want. That's all families want.
Yeah, absolutely. So in closing, I'm going to ask you kind of another, I don't know, not so much weird, but just curious question. Do you have a particular quote that you live your life by, or even that you think of often, or maybe even that you find yourself like saying to others a lot? And maybe I should have talked to some of your colleagues and employees, because they may be like, oh, she's always saying this, or this. But is there some quote or that you think about, or that you find yourself, kind of like maybe even like a North Star when it comes to behavior or things that you're doing?
I am numerous, right? And I'm completely situational and all of that. And I'm glad you didn't talk to anybody at Lifeworks because they will probably mock me, right? But which is great.
Yeah.
But I think one that I rely on a lot, particularly during times of challenge, right? Because this is very hard work to do, and we are asking youth to do very hard work. So one quote that I find myself using probably disproportionately is that, if you're going to go for the long jump, you're going to get some sand in your shorts, right? And I love that quote because, we're at Lifeworks, we're continually trying to push what we can do, and we're trying to have large vision, and we try to raise money when seemingly there's no money to be raised. We're trying to do these impossible goals, and it's not always easy. And sometimes when you put yourself out there, you get knocked a little bit, right? So there's always going to be some synergy. But the same for our youth, right? It's like we can't guarantee a completely safe pathway to taking risks. You may put yourself out there. You may apply to a school and not get in, or apply to a job and it turns out to be a disaster because it wasn't meant for you. Every time you put yourself out there or you take a leap, you're gonna get a little sand in your shorts. I'll tell you the one other, and it's silly, but it is timely. And because this is the Weird Homes Tour, I hope I can get away with it. So, I do a lot of early morning running and bike riding, and there's this yard sign about a mile from my house. And I swear I want to steal it or find it somewhere online. And my age might show on this too. The summer I moved to Austin, I went to a movie my first week, and it was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, right? And it's a silly movie, but this, the long-awaited third movie is coming out this Friday, right? But there's this yard sign in front of a house not too far from me, and it's just Bill and Ted, and they're saying, be excellent to each other. And I think of right now where we find ourselves with, when we're between the two political conventions, right? And rancor is out there, and people want to keep their TVs off because they just literally can't contain it, right? Yeah. And I just keep driving by the sign, and I'm like, okay, Bill and Ted know something. Can we just
a silly movie,
excellent to each other
can provide such simple but impactful,
it's like advice. We can do this. We can be excellent to each other.
Yeah, and I think that is at the core of it. You can slice and dice all the stuff however you like, but I like that it is so incredibly simple. Be excellent to each other, take care of each other. Be
compassionate.
Be compassionate. Have empathy. And I think that those are very important aspects, to live your life by. So, I thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
I learned so much, and I'm just so enthusiastic. There's no way that you know this story, but I will tell you. When I moved to Austin 6 years ago or what have you, David Neff, the co-founder of the Weird Homes Tour, was one of the first people that I was introduced to by a friend. And he's been such a great connector for me. And it seems like he just continues to do that with all of his kind of entrepreneurial efforts. And so Weird Homes Tour, I'm so happy that they connected with you and made this what seems like a very just great partnership. And I guess just out of curiosity, how did you were you there when you first got involved with Weird Homes Tour? How did that come about? Do you remember?
The Weird Homes connection?
Yeah.
Well, they got involved in Lifeworks. I don't think it was anything that we did proactively.
Got it.
Yeah, they got involved with us and made the opportunity available, and it's been 7 years, and it's one of our favorite things that we're involved in because it is just very Austin. It's very us, and we're very much a come as you are organization, and it's just I'm looking forward to the virtual this year because I can jump on as well.
Yeah. Well, you'll see a familiar face, this mug,
Oh, yeah.
co-hosting it. So, and whenever you're watching this, just know we are recording this at a time where the Austin tour is coming up again, September 5th, 2020. But at any point, it's always hard to do this on camera. At any point, you can go to weirdhomestour.com and learn more about all the tours they have going on virtual. Hopefully you're watching this in the future and we're having in-person tours again. So weirdhomestour.com. You can also connect with them on social media, Instagram and Facebook, Weird Homes Tour. So before I jump out though, Susan, where can people go to learn more, get involved, donate with Lifeworks?
Our website is www.lifeworksaustin.org.
Fantastic. Lifeworksaustin.org. Please take the time to go there. Are you guys on any social medias?
We are on social medias, and you can see all of those links on the website.
Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, so you can connect with them there through their website. So thank you again, Susan. Really appreciate it. Had a great time. And for everyone out there watching, please be sure to get your tickets for the Weird Homes Tour in Austin, September 5th. And if you're watching this and it's way past that, then you can, it's always so hard to do. There we go. weirdhomestour.com. And I thank you so much. And thank you so much for keeping it weird.
Thank you.